Apologize. When Ben invited me here, I didn't realize that you were going to have to suffer me 4 times. But I'll try and keep my comments brief on this because we've got an amazing panel here of experts. We're talking about basically how a brand deal comes together and why sometimes it seems so easy that Coca-Cola presents, you know, the Michael Jackson tour or whatever it may be. A lot of work goes into it, and the people up here are dealing with all sides of it. We tried to come up with a running order to give you of how these things come together. So I'm going to throw it to Mark Moreau first to talk about from the, well, actually, no. Where are you? There you are. I'm throwing it to you first to talk about the brand wants to sponsor something. So start with the genesis.
Right, okay. Is my microphone working?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I'm billed as the executioner, but I would like to be called more the activator and the brand partner. So we're often brought in at the beginning of the process. Normally, it's sort of at the beginning of the sort of new financial year when the brands have just confirmed their budgets, and we normally work directly with the marketing department, the brand managers, etc. And they'll have a range of promotional plans, including TV, radio, press, and normally within that, that plan will be a line for sponsorship, road shows, brand experience, etc. So we will then look at what products or what consumers they want to target. The sort of clients that I work for are like Nike, Virgin Mobile, Guitar Hero.
What is your company? Oh, let's back up. What is your company?
It's Bugle Communications. So we're a brand marketing and event production company.
Okay.
So, and the type of customers that we're targeting are generally sort of 16 to 24-year-olds. So a lot of the plans revolve around music, fashion, or sport. So we'll, for example, with Guitar Hero, they wanted to get closer to music. So we would look at the product they've got. They've got DJ Hero, they've got Guitar Hero, and we'd look at how could we get that brand closer to music. One idea we come up with last year was to work with a number of festivals. So at that point, we would go out and talk to promoters. Ideally, we like to talk to festivals directly, but more and more is the case that we'll have to go through a broker. So we'll approach the festivals and we will ask them to pull together a proposal that we will then analyse and then present back to the client. At that point, we'll look at what the variables are, what the properties, exclusivities. Obviously, many of the festivals have already got relationships in place with existing or competitor brands. So one by one, they're discounted, and eventually we'll come up with 1 or 2 sort of festival partners that we would, or music properties that we want to progress with. At that point, we would go back and we would ask that festival or that promoter to develop a proposal which will be billed as a heads of agreement. That will then get passed over to the brand manager, who will then hand it over to the lawyers. And then we sort of take a step back and we come back at the end of the process when we activate the deal.
Okay, Cliff, why don't you introduce yourself and then tell us how you figure into the process.
Okay, my name's Cliff Louis. I'm a partner of the law firm Lewis Silkin. Prior to that, I was 5 years at Warner Music and then 5 years within Capital Radio. So I've seen things from both sides of the fence. My firm, not only do we act for major rights holders, but we are the #1 advertising, marketing and brands law firm. So I work particularly with big brands such as Ford, Bacardi, Coke, Apple, Nokia in relation to their music work, as well as on the rights side as well. I mentioned that just because I would say that we're at a point where brands need music as much as music needs brands, actually, and that actually people are pushing against open doors often violently, but you are dealing with 2 different mindsets. So I would say that my role in the place is to be the facilitator, the enabler, who can actually translate the various expectations on both sides. For me, it really depends on where we're brought into the process. Often what you will have found is that a brand will have picked one artist, only got that artist in mind, only got one budget in mind, and then goes to the wrong people. And one of the things I think we really want to bring out...
Who are the wrong people?
Well, the wrong people are just thinking that there is a one-stop shop in relation to a brand deal. There are certain veto rights that will sit with management and with artists as well. And often what you'll do is that you'll get upfront fees.
Or labels.
Well, this is the issue, is that what will happen is an upfront fee is agreed in a vacuum. Hilariously, one of the things that brands do is that when people ask them, what's your budget, they actually tell the truth. So they'll say, it's £500,000, and then strangely enough, the fee is £500,000. At which point, everybody buys into the £500,000. And says, oh, by the way, there's this label. Oh, and by the way, there's the publisher. Oh, and by the way, there's the activation cost. Oh, then there's the PRS cost. So the way that the lawyer should be brought on board is identifying all the relevant stakeholders. And then that's the point where you don't negotiate. It's the point where you actually get buy-in. By actually having transparency. The issue you've got within the music industry is that effectively, fundamentally, people don't trust each other, which is why you end up in the horrible world of most favoured nations. Most favoured nations supposedly ended wars and helped diplomacy. I think it creates more wars and these sorts of deals than I've ever seen before. So the truth is, it's about transparency. It's about getting buy-in from the right stakeholders at the right time. The gatekeeper to that, I would say, is management in terms of making that happen. But what will happen is that you'll get a brand going to a label goes to manager, nah, not my idea. Or they'll go to the publisher, nah, not my idea, and there's pushback. So you need to get the emotional buy-in at the right point, and particularly with regard to the artist. There's no point in spending a ton on legal fees, a ton on costs in respect of your experiential marketing agency, then realise that that brand or that band do not suit each other.
So, Mark, everyone in the room heard Mark keynote yesterday, so I don't know if you need an introduction, but how do you facilitate, massage, and get that emotional and financial buy-in from your artist and then from the other stakeholders?
I think the first thing that you have to do is identify what your artist needs. Obviously, it's got to be in the context of your intelligent smarts about what the brand is prepared to do as well. I spend a lot of time working on the whole concept of where my artist wants to go and what he's trying to deliver effectively. And I've got quite a bit of experience with it, including a 3-year campaign that we did with Heineken with Paul Oakenfold, where Paul, sitting in a room with myself and the brand managers of Heineken, came up with a concept that lasted 3 years and probably cost Heineken about $35 million over that period. But it was very, very successful for Heineken. They carried on doing it. They didn't have to.
How did $35 million break down? Who saw the
quite a bit of it came to us. A lot of it stuck. A lot of it stuck, but it was an intelligent, it was a sentient deal for Paul, because what we did during that 3-year, Paul didn't do all of it. Eventually we handed on, I think Roger Sanchez led it for a year after Paul walked away from it. What we did in that particular case is that it gave Paul the opportunity to go into new territories like China and Taiwan with a 30-man production and about 25 tons of incredible gear and lighting and screens and footage. And it allowed him to go into those territories following a 6-month activation period to say he's coming. Mm-hmm. There was a competition element that Paul judged on a Friday night, and on a Saturday night he performed, and the competition winner performed as a DJ with him. And it elevated Paul in territories where he was a well-known name into something it's much, much more significant. And from my point of view, it was a sentient deal. It was an intelligent deal because it was not about sticking a tube into the tanker called Heineken and sucking as much cash out of it. There was an element of that. It was much more about what can Heineken do for us. And what I find, and it's interesting now, I'm also centrally in the sports business, is that I'm looking at some of the sports deal. At the moment we're doing a deal for a very well-known Premier Division, very important player, with a footwear, a sportswear company. And the deal just lacks so much intelligence. It's a huge amount of money for playing a certain amount of games and wearing the shoes. And it just strikes me as being dumb. It's a dumb deal that doesn't do our athlete as much good as it could. And it certainly doesn't seem to do the sportswear manufacturer, but people seem to be happy with it. So,
but how do you counsel them when you see that it's going? Are you silent and take the money, or do you say, guys, you're making a mistake?
Well, there are certain people, of course, that will say, if I have no commitment to do anything in return for the money, then that's a smart deal. But it doesn't seem like a smart deal for me if you're trying to build a brand and that brand happens to be your sports star or your music star. So I'm always looking for what can the money do for us beyond lining pockets.
One thing I would add to that, Mark, is that I think the money has been sort of beaten in submission and actually are coming up with quite insipid concepts based on bad deals of the past. One of the good things about the crunch and people needing to do business is that you can ask for things now that you could never ask for before. So one of the things I do is push my clients, both the brand side, the content owners and the agencies, is to think absolutely creatively. And you're probably going to get more buy-in. And the truth is you might not even pay any more for it. and you'll get more activation out of it. But I think that's very much a hangover from the past.
Yeah.
I think another thing to say on that as well is that when you're doing a deal with a brand or a sponsor, it's ultimately about the relationship long term, and it's in your interest, presuming that if you've got a property that is going to last for years and years and years, it's a hell of a lot easier to make a good relationship with someone from the outset and really deliver what they want, be creative and think of ideas that can match their marketing objectives, so that they renew at the end of the contract. Otherwise, after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you're back at the same position and you're cold calling or you're doing whatever. It's in everyone's interest really to make the deal work longer term.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to Alex here for a moment. Who are you?
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Vasopoulos. I work for Sony Music UK, and I work in a digital and what's called strategic partnerships division, ultimately a brand partnerships division. So I spend my morning licensing digital services and an afternoon working on brand deals like we're discussing right now. And so what we're trying to do at the moment, this division's, the strategic partnerships area is new, and what we've done is brought everyone that's ever had a conversation with a brand within Sony Music under one roof. So the Sync team, which is more traditional, and this new division, and myself from the digital side, so that we can all work under one roof. And I think what we've done recently, we put on a brand night in our office, got everyone in the house and played some music. And what we followed that up with a pamphlet to say, give our mission statement. And what we want to do is say, hands up, we've got it wrong in the past. We might have blocked deals, we might have got in the way, or it might have been the publishers that have got in the way, and we've, that's not to do with us, but we've got it wrong, no doubt, definitely. I've got it wrong, we've definitely got it wrong. We want to fix that. We want to work with brands, we want to make it easy. We're not interested in this notion of 360 deals. We're not in that business. We're here to partner with publishers and artist managers and all of the other stakeholders, no doubt, but we don't want to own all of that. And we just want to make this easy, and we've sort of built these 8 steps on how we're going to be doing that. So
what are the 8 steps?
I don't think I've got them all off head.
You got your pamphlet.
I've got my pamphlet, and I can happily distribute them around. But broadly, the 8 steps cover communication, breaking the deal down to the simplest level, and us providing a sort of one-stop shop as far as the music rights. So acting on behalf of the publishers and liaising with those guys, and also matching the artist and the brand as well is very important, because we have a consumer research team within Sony that does artist DNAs, as we call them, which basically says what their audience is. So when a brand may come to us directly, or an agency, and say, we've got Twix or whatever it might be, and our audience is this, we can instead of saying, yeah, you want to deal with Calvin Harris because that's who we want to plug, we can have proper evidence to say that your target demographic is definitely Calvin Harris, and it might be Milo and whoever else, and that's who you want to kind of deal with for very good reasons. So it's matching the brands and the bands is another part of our mission statement, and making sure we do that correctly, and ultimately working to the brief, and not this needs to work for both people, and not just trying to squeeze as much money out of a brand as possible. And when someone says they've got £500,000, we go back, even worse than saying we go back with an offer for £500,000, we'll go back with an offer for £1 million because we're going to be really greedy. That's not what we want to do. We want to make this work. We want to grow business rather than these kind of flash in the pan one-off deals. We want the second, third, fourth. And you know what? If the first deal doesn't bring us any money, and it's a deal with Coke or Nike or whoever it is, but we build a great relationship, and that might lead to money in deal 2. We're in it for, we're definitely keen to have those conversations.
Can I give a quick plug, actually? There's been a lot of major label bashing, and again, if that national sport were ever to die, I'd be personally very sad. But Sony Music, not only their brand segmentation, their tool, the cone, how they actually work with artists, and having been on various sides of the table, from Alex on his side, on the other side, they are actually amongst the most innovative and can-do amongst them out there. So again, before everybody kicks the major label, I just want to say that they do it very, very well.
And from an agency perspective as well, in terms of how sort of things have changed over a sort of 12 to 24-month period, I mean, it makes my life so much easier now when I'm going in to sort of do the fact-finding, and I sort of go in and ask the question, you know, about demographics, target audience, and they've got all this research to hand that really backs up, you know, what are normally quite big money deals. So it's not just gut feel or instinct. There's some hard figures and numbers behind it, which really does help sort of drive the deal forward in terms when it goes through to the FD at the big brands.
I just want to say that until I met Cliff, I hated attorneys. So if I get that in there. So now you're at AEG. Talk a little bit about what you do and
Sure.
how we enable all of the discussion that's happening here.
Absolutely. Well, hi everyone. My name's Matt Glover. I work for AEG Europe. AEG is one of the biggest live touring and entertainment venue operators in the world. We recently opened the O2 Arena in London. We've also opened the O2 in Berlin. And we've most recently just signed Michael Jackson up to do 50 nights at the O2, which we all hope he will attend.
Good luck.
And we hope as well.
We've got very expensive insurance. So my kind of role at AEG to date, I now run a venue within the O2, but prior to that I was working on a lot of the brand partnerships that we've brokered there. AEG is kind of unique in that it has a great capacity for firstly connecting with brands, but also cramming them into a very small space in a very large number, and being able to balance all of the different needs of those brands and give them value at the same time. So at the O2 Arena in London, for instance, obviously there's the overarching O2 naming rights deal, which is massive both for them and for us. But underneath the tent, we have another 14 brands that all coexist, sometimes happily, sometimes a bit unhappily. But our job is very much to balance BMW's needs with Adidas's needs and all the rest.
Where does that go bad? I mean, where you say sometimes unhappily without naming a brand or whatever, but where are the collisions?
I mean, it's a daily slog basically. It's kind of, you know, you have because when you're doing venue sponsorship deals, not only have you got your permanent sort of founding partners and the O2 god above. You've also got obviously tours and events coming through at any given time, and those promoters may have negotiated their own sponsorship deals for those tours specifically. So
have you had a situation where Vodafone's sponsoring a show at the O2?
We have, yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
You've got to get really good contracts, and that's where Cliff comes in. But you've got to, you know, there's ways of getting around it. It's about being flexible and about building in, having a relationship with people and explaining, look, guys, this is the reality. This is a big venue. You've gotten involved with it because of the fact that there are some of the world's biggest artists coming here, and you get association from that. But you have to understand that there's other people who have their brand relationships too. So when we have Vodafone coming into the O2, for instance, we have a caveat in the contract that says we have what we call blank days, where a competitor brand is allowed to sort of put up their signage and do what they need to do. But I think in the case of the O2 and O2 and Vodafone, it's not such a great example because O2 gets such an overarching, brilliant brand experience from owning that venue and, you know, having their name on the London Underground, for God's sake. That's the kind of stuff that you can't pay for, really.
But they did.
But they did. Idiots. Just kidding. They're great.
Okay, so I think it'd be instructive, not viscerally instructive, but really instructive to talk about where things do go horribly wrong, and by comparison, when they go incredibly right, and what made it go wrong and what made it go right. So, any of you jump in with some examples of things that didn't have to go off the rails but did, and what could be done?
Okay, so I'd say it can go horribly wrong a lot of times, many places. There are so many stakeholders involved in this. You've got management, publishers, us, agents, brands, artists, and all of these guys have, some of them more crazy opinions than others, but all of them have their own opinion and change their opinion. So I think the number one rule is transparency. Everyone needs to be very, very transparent about what's going on. So when it works, from my respect, when I may conceptualize something that one of our artists would be getting involved with for a brand, the first thing I do before even putting pen to paper on that concept is I'll ring up the manager and I'll speak to the label MD. and make sure both of them are in tune with that concept. Because if I'm talking about one of Simon Cowell's acts, for example, I'll